second sessions a little bit later on. And we really hope that you're going to get to be as much of that as you possibly can. We are not going to do much of an introduction of ourselves, so I really appreciate what Pat said just a minute. There'll be a little bit more about our story as we go through the day. But this morning, this is just a really cool visual. But I want to tell you, it is really volunteer intensive. I mean, we're going to need a lot of volunteers. So go ahead and take a deep breath. And when we say that we need somebody, you can just help kind of speed things along. If you'll come on up and just help us. We're not going to embarrass anybody. You're not going to have to hula hoop, I promise.
All we need are warm bodies.
All we need
because this illustration works a whole lot better if we can see it rather than just speak it.
Yep.
Because it's one that just in the last 10 years of working with couples, as we begin to talk about it, then Richard and I began to see it, and we thought we need to share what we're seeing with other people. So that's what we've written this out to where you can see it, but we just need your warm body to help us tell the story.
Yeah. So what we're going to do this morning is there's going to be a couple of verses that we're really going to focus on. One of them is Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4. Now, one of the things that Jennalynn and I hope is that by Tuesday night, you guys will have in mind really what Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4 says, especially the first part of it. It says that marriage is to be honored by everyone. Now, would you raise your hand if you're a part of that everyone group? Okay, yeah, all right, very good. If you don't have your hand up, then you missed what I said. We're all a part of the everyone group. So who is supposed to honor marriage? Everyone. And Jennalynn and I really believe, especially in the church at heart, we really want to do that. But Jennalynn and I have recognized that even in our own relationship and as we watch the relationships of others, there are some ways that we are not showing honor to marriage in a good enough way, and it's really putting some pressure on relationships and doing things that we really, if we'll examine it, we don't want to do. And so that's what we're hoping that you're going to see this morning. The other passage is the one that is the basis for our marriage ministry. We are called What God Has Joined Ministries. We shorten that with WGHJ. That's not for a radio station on the east side of the country. That's just for short for What God Has Joined. And so Matthew 19:6 is the passage for that. You may be more familiar with that in the Hebrews 13:4 one. So therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Now, Jennalynn really likes to add in that idea of let no one or nothing separate. And so we may be emphasizing that as we go along. But those are the two passages this morning. Marriage should be honored by everyone. And what God has joined together, let no one separate. All right, very good.
Let me just say something about the no one or nothing. Do we want that on the PowerPoint?
Yes. Can that first slide from the Bible class go ahead and go on it there?
On the no one or nothing, like I said, you'll be hearing, or like Richard said, you'll be hearing more about our story, is that a lot of people look at that passage and they think someone in the marriage that separates the two that are joined together. And yet in our marriage, and even what you're going to see today, sometimes it's decisions that we've made. Sometimes it's personalities like anger that I really did struggle with, and disappointment and frustration in the marriage. And so it's not just a person that can separate us, but it can be our personality, those decisions, and life that pulls us apart. So that's why I really emphasize let no one or nothing separate what God joined together.
All right.
And then on the honoring, one of the things we want to really be emphasizing between now and Tuesday is that we as parents, for those of you who have children, or if you're grandparents, we really struggle with how do we teach children what honor in marriage looks like. I mean, how much time do we teach them about children obey your parents, and we teach them about loving God and loving other people, but we never really sit down with our children and our grandchildren and say, what does Hebrews 13:4 say? And how do you, even as a child, honor our marriage? And as a grandchild, honor our marriage? And what are you seeing as a child or a grandchild about how to honor marriage so that you take it into your marriage? And so that's what today's going to begin, the visual of that. And then between this afternoon and Tuesday, we're going to be looking at, so how do we physically, tangibly do that?
All right, so we've already assigned one couple. We got Randy,
Ryan
and Mandy up here. So y'all coming up, they're going to be our first couple. And so we're going to be working with them along. But we also need a couple who will be their friend. Now I know for Ryan that's a stretch, but if we got a couple that would be friends to Ryan and Mandy, if you'd come on up and help us out here.
Who'll be Ryan and Mandy's friend? Let's come on, because this has got a lot of fun things to do. Come on, just a couple will come be their friend.
You can come on up. Yeah, all right.
Come on, Michaela and Steve, you can do it.
Up. All right.
Thanks for jumping up, friend.
All right.
Okay, you guys stand right up here.
All right. Now this is Michaela and Steve. Y'all don't have to remember their names, but You can say nice to
I
meet you.
need parents for Mandy. Well, can I get a couple right quick to come stand here and be Mandy's parents?
And I need a couple who will be Ryan's
Come on,
parents.
you don't have to say anything, please. We need to get started with the
let's
visual.
Come on,
Come
somebody.
on, just a couple come stand here. You have to stand there, that's all. You just have to stand there. You're not going to have to do anything
somebody
else.
will be Ryan's parents. Come on up. A couple who will be Ryan's parents.
No friends, I got no parents.
There you go. Come on up. There you go. All right, very good.
I need for Mandy to have a coworker, so if I can just get a coworker to come up here for Mandy.
And I need one, all right, good, one person to be a coworker with Ryan. One
And
person to be a coworker. All right, good.
And I need a ministry leader. You can be a ministry leader for Mandy. Come on, you can do it. Yep, just one for right now. Okay, I've got parents, coworker, and ministry leader and friend. I'm covered.
All right, and I need one person who will be a ministry leader on Ryan's side. A ministry leader on Ryan's side. Anybody? A male? A male who will be a ministry leader on Ryan's side. All right, I'm hearing Paul. Come on up, Paul.
Uh-huh.
All right.
And
I don't
Paul's
think that
married
was the Lord
to
speaking to me, but I know I heard a voice.
Han. Okay, and so we've got the ministry leaders married, which actually works pretty
All
good
right,
for each other.
sweet. Okay. All right. All right, very good. Well, that works. That works. All right, so this is what we've got. Ryan and Mandy have not met at this particular point, and so I want to stick with Steve and Michaela for just a second. They are a married couple. They've been married for a couple of years, and so they're still kind of in that honeymoon stage. Things are going really, really well for them, but they know Ryan and Mandy, and they like them both, and they think, boy, they would be really, really good together. And so they actually introduced Ryan and Mandy. I'll go ahead and introduce them.
So you invite them out, go on a double date.
All right.
Okay, you start going out on double dates together. You guys have them over to the house for game night and watching football games and things like that. And what you do is you're still Twitter-pated. You know, there's been a few little bumps in the first couple of years of marriage, but for the most part, you're still just really enjoying being married. And so Mandy and Ryan begin to see this in you. They love the energy between the two of you and how much fun you have together. And so it becomes contagious. And you're thinking, man, this is pretty good. I kind of like you. You kind of like me. We kind of like the looks of marriage here. And so they begin to date a little more seriously. So now Randy and Ryan, come on up here. I'm going to do Ryan. Okay. So you just kind of stay in the background. You're still supporting them, but you're not as involved. Now you're still spending some time together, but they really want to be alone more than with you now because they're really enjoying this dating business, okay? And they're getting pretty friendly dating. Very quickly, I might add. You know, we can't say very much. Richard proposed to me literally on our first date. Our first, just the two of us, we did all the double dating and church dating and all this. The first night that he picked me up, that we went out, just the two of us, he proposed with the ring. I accepted, and we got married 4 months later. We do not recommend doing that.
Yeah, that's just a report,
okay?
not a recommendation.
And we told our kids very, very clearly, do not do what we did.
All right.
Okay?
So there comes a time then when they like each other enough and they're confident enough about their relationship that Mandy decides, my folks need to meet Ryan. And so go ahead and
introduce. Or her folks decide they need to meet Ryan.
Ryan to your folks.
So come and introduce.
He's a little tall for it. All right. And Ryan then wants to introduce Mandy to his parents. So go ahead then.
Mom, Dad, this is Mandy.
Yeah, stay up here. Stay up here. We're circling around.
Son, don't mess this up.
All right, very good, very good. All right.
So Ryan and Mandy, y'all move down just a little bit. And I want you to start seeing the support growing. So now you've invited your parents in to see you. They're getting excited about you. And then Michaela and Steve, y'all stay in the group here. So start moving where you put a hand on them to where they're feeling a lot of support. So just touch them, and they're feeling this support. They're dating, and the more they're bringing people into their lives to know this relationship, the more affirmation, the more even endorsement of, you know what, they're both really good Christian young people. They've really gone through some stages of maturing and really healthy dating, and they've got a lot of people supporting them and liking what they're doing. And then Mandy begins to go to work, and she's telling her coworker, who's a single mom, by the way, I have got the most wonderful man in my life. He makes me happier than you can ever imagine. She's, yeah. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. This is great. And if this makes you happy, it makes you a better worker, then go for it.
Yeah. And Ryan has a coworker as well. Now, again, yeah. Now, Ryan's coworker is shacking up with his girlfriend. That's what's happening with him.
Whose girlfriend?
Way to go, Peter.
Your own girlfriend. She's your girlfriend. All right. All right. It's a secret.
The secret is out.
All right. So he's shacking up with his girlfriend, and again, he has seen several divorces among friends, and that's one of the reasons for it. I mean, if you talk to him about marriage, I mean, he had grandparents who stayed married, but his parents divorced. Most of his friends have been married for 2 or 3 years. They've gotten divorced. The girl that he's living with, she's seen the very same thing. And so when you say, hey, listen, what do y'all think about getting married? They think, listen, when people get divorced, it's a disaster. And I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. And you only have to get a divorce if you get married, and they've seen so much of it, they don't know a marriage that doesn't get divorced these days. And so they're terrified of it. And so they're just saying, listen, if you want to try this, that's okay. It's just not our bag. That's not what we're going to do.
And then Mandy's ministry, her children's leader, Mandy is the best preschool worker that the children's ministry has ever had. And so she is just so proud of Mandy and the work that she does. So just put your hand on Mandy and just support her. She's listening to her talk about how much she loves this guy and how much. But here's the deal about the ministry leader. She's really happy for Mandy, and she's married, but you never really see her husband. She is fully devoted to the whole preschool children's wing, and she supports Mandy, but, she never really talks about marriage all that much, but she's really happy for her as long as it doesn't interfere with how much time she puts in with the children's ministry, because that's so important that we train the children up and that we not spend too much time talking about relationships and marriage with them.
Yeah, and Ryan's ministry leader, he has been involved with the junior high ministry. Oh, excuse me, ministry leader. Sorry about that, Dad. He's been involved with the junior high boys ministry for a long time. Now, if you know junior high boys, those are the boys who have hit puberty, but they don't know how to control it yet. And so to find somebody who will really, really help them out and stick with them, and this guy goes on every retreat. When they have a lock-in, he is there for every lock-in. He coaches all the junior high boys in the skit stuff during LTC. I mean, this is his deal. He does the junior high boys ministry. And so what was I about to say? So Ryan has been a big help with him in that. And so Ryan has joined him in that. Ryan plays a huge role in that as well. And everything that ministry leader goes to, Ryan goes to as well. Ryan is huge with that.
Okay, so now we've got this set up. They're feeling pretty good. I mean, just the key people, where they spend their time and energy, are just really feeling supportive of this. And they are just more and more Twitter-pated, and they're looking at each other with these star-glazed eyes. And all of a sudden, Mandy starts really kind of hinting at rings. The magazines get laid open with rings. And Ryan finally catches on to the hint. But what does Ryan need to do before he talks to Mandy?
Yeah.
That's right. So let's have the ministry leader and coworker go back here with the friends. You guys come back here where the friends are. Come right back here with the friends. But you're still supporting them. Just step right back a little bit.
Not too far, because you're still in support. You're still really,
so let's bring
really
the parents up. So Ryan, what do you need to do?
All right, so he said yes. Everybody applaud. Yay, we're so happy. And so then Ryan makes the special deal. He gets together all of his friends. You know how the Facebook proposal things go these days.
Richard, let me just add something right. Is this being recorded?
I don't know.
Are we being recorded, Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll make
Yes,
I'll make it platonic. I'll make it kind of. We do know a couple that takes marriage very seriously, and the guy did come and talk to the parents about proposing to their daughter, and with prayerful consideration, the parents said no. And I think we need to have more of this. I think that we need to just look more than are they in love and are they happy, but are they really who we want to give the blessing into this marriage, or is there more preparation that needs to go into place? Where we're excited when there's a yes, we really want to say yes enthusiastically and not because we're afraid of saying no. And I really applaud this couple for being able to say no. And this couple, the daughter highly respected her parents. And so as we talk about even a sacred history and passing on a sacred legacy, because there was respect for her parents to speak into this, they didn't get married. and the story continues. It hasn't completely unfolded yet. So don't be afraid as a parent. If it's not a good thing, don't say yes out of pressure or feeling like that you have to for some reason.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So Ryan has got the okay from Mandy's dad, and so Ryan, go ahead and propose to. She said yes. Yay! All right. Now, now, it's really, really interesting what happens at this point, because everything to this point has really been focused on these two and on the relationship, right? Now that this happens, what does all the attention turn to? The wedding day,
wedding.
exactly. And so everybody is looking forward to a particular day, and so it's kind of shifted really from the relationship. And yet, while they're focused on the day, and while they know that day is coming, it does impact the way that people treat this relationship.
And so Mandy, instead of talking to her family and to her friends and her coworker and her ministry leader about how great and wonderful Ryan is and discovering what she likes more about him today, she's now talking about wedding plans. Who's the photographer? Who's the caterer? Where's it going to be? What time's it going to be? What my dress is going to look like? What colors it's going to be? And the saga goes on and on and on. And that's all they're talking about. And she begins to quit looking at Ryan through the lens of he's going to be my husband and what do I treasure about him today, but she's looking through the lens of what is my wedding day going to be like and what's going to be special about that. And Ryan just kind of takes a back burner. He just kind of takes a seat back
Whatever
in the back.
you want. That's what, whatever you want.
You know, whatever you want. I want you to be happy. But there's not a lot of investment in the relationship because all of her attention and focus and their conversation even is now about the wedding.
Yeah. And yet everybody around them is really in support of this relationship. And so they're just really, really encouraging them in that, recognizing the day is coming. So we want to make sure that everything is as easy for them as it can possibly be. So, for example, they get engaged on August the 8th. Thanksgiving is coming up. Ryan goes hunting with his dad every year at Thanksgiving. But this particular year, there's going to be some other things going on. They have a March wedding coming up. And so this particular year, Dad says, hey, listen, I know that we go hunting every year. It's a big tradition of ours. But this year, you just go ahead. I know Mandy's parents want you to come over to her house for Thanksgiving. That's going to be okay this year. Go ahead and do that. And so, Mom and Dad, y'all just kind of push Ryan over there toward Mandy. Y'all are encouraging him in this relationship. You're going to want to make sure that it works.
And Mandy's mom tells her, you know what, I know we do the girls' shopping trip. We go away for a week and we buy all the Christmas gifts and get everything all ready and prepped for Christmas. But you know what, you've got a wedding to be planning. And taking a whole week off right now doesn't really work with what you're going to need to take off and be planning for your wedding. So you don't worry about doing that trip this year. We're going to be okay without it. There'll be plenty of other Christmases to come, and I want you to know you have my blessing not to do this part this year because I really want to support you, and I don't want you to be stressed out between now and March with that. And then her coworkers are saying, you know what, this is a big push time during the holidays, but as soon as we get through the holidays, I want you to know between January and March, we're going to cut back. We're not going to cut your pay. I'm not going to expect more out of you. I really want you to just be able to put your time and energy into planning your marriage.
Yeah, and Ryan is the kind of guy, he and his coworker have a business together to where they had been working 60 and 70 hours a week, really trying to build this thing up. It's a great startup kind of deal. They're not making a lot of money yet, but they've got some really neat projects coming in. They've been really, really excited about it. But even in the midst of this, his coworker says, hey, listen, I know there's going to be some times when you're going to be in some classes maybe with Mandy, or you're going to be needing to do some things with her. So you go ahead and do that. I'll really take it this season. I'll run with the ball. I want you to know I got your back.
And then the ministry leader for Mandy is saying, you know what, January, February, March, it's flu season. A lot of people don't get their kids out. We don't really have a lot of people in Bible school. I can get some back row people, some alternate people to come in and really pull in the preschool program. And there's a pre-marriage class that you guys, I want you to feel free to take that, and I want you to enjoy taking that class. So we're just going to let you off out of the preschool for this period of time just so you can be preparing for your wedding day and getting everything shaped up and ready. And then they've got friends who are still back here who brought them together. They're woohoo, all excited for them. And although marriage has gotten a little bit tough for them, as sticky, they're excited for their marriage. So they've shifted their focus from the marriage that they've been celebrating to celebrating the marriage of their friends. So they're throwing parties and getting them gifts and having just fun little shindigs thinking about their marriage instead of the one that they've had.
Yeah, and finally, even with Ryan's ministry leader, he thinks, okay, I know this is going to be a season where Ryan's going to be spending a lot of time with Mandy, and so he works really hard, and he gets 5 volunteers to take Ryan's place in that junior high ministry. It was hard to convince him, but he brought him in and said, listen, just for a season, we've really got to take over where Ryan is so that Ryan can really focus on the wedding day that he's got coming up.
Okay, so do you see how Randy and Randy, thank you, Richard.
So everybody kind of
Ryan and Mandy are feeling,
kind of pushed them
I mean,
together,
they are
put your
feeling
hands
like
on them.
life is going to be wonderful. This is going to be the best thing we've ever done. All these people are working for us. They're supporting, Richard,
Oh, you got it.
they're supporting us. They're encouraging. Did you think I'd let you down?
No.
They're supporting us. They're encouraging us. We just feel really, really warm fuzzies. We feel good about what we're doing and how this is all working out. So March the 16th comes.
And it is the day. And so, Ryan, do you?
Yes.
All right. And Mandy, do you? They said I do. And so now y'all are married. And what that means is that you have gotten in a hula hoop. Now, I want you to notice all of these people are in your life, but who's in the hula hoop? All right. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Just these two in the hula
And
hoop.
who joined you together?
Yeah. And so you could join with me. So what God has joined together, let
No one
no
or
man.
nothing
Do we
separate.
really believe that? Do we really believe that? That what God has joined together, let no one
one
separate. All right, let's see if we really believe that in the way that we typically run things.
We were at a wedding yesterday. They asked the audience, will you commit to supporting and praying for this marriage? And I really wondered, out of the several hundred people who were sitting there that all said we do, will they really support and pray for that marriage? Because let's see what happens. Randy and Richard, Ryan and Mandy. We're just going to do Randy and get it over here, cover them both.
If we say Randy, you know who we're talking about.
Ryan and Mandy they go on their honeymoon. They come back. They're feeling really good. They got some great premarital coaching from this great couple named Richard and Jennalynn. They've got some secure things to be emotionally, physically, and spiritually whole, healthy, and holy. They've put some great tools into place. They are just really excited and on fire about creating a wonderful marriage that God joined them together and how it's going to be a light to the rest of the world. And they are determined we will never even speak of divorce. Nothing and no one is ever going to separate us. And so they're doing their daily prayers and devotionals. They're spending time laughing together every day. They're greeting each other with 30-second hugs and 10-second kisses, and they're keeping the chemistry just alive in their marriage in a really dynamic way. That's all going to make sense by Tuesday night to all of you. Okay, and so they are just all excited about this, and they feel very secure because who joined them together? God did, and what God joined together, let no one or nothing separate them. And so they're feeling really, really good. And then April comes. And now Production Network has really picked up. And so the coworker really needs Mandy to just step up and do some little bit extra. So she begins to pull on her just a little bit. Just take her by the arm and tug on her just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the same thing is happening.
Keep
Remember,
pulling.
they working 70 hours a week before the wedding, and while the coworker kind of let him off during some of that time, the reality is the end of the season really did pick things up, and now some of those projects are really near the end, and he really needs Ryan's help. And so you're going to pull on Ryan a little bit, saying, I really need your help. You got to put in a few more hours.
And they talk about it a little bit, and they're thinking, you need some extra hours. I'm going to pull in some extra hours. It's okay. We can work this out. And if we do this and make some more money, then maybe we could look at getting out of this apartment and go ahead and getting us a house. Because Steve and Michaela have a house, and it'd be fun. And we want to just advance our marriage. If they've been married 4 years, then let's be married 4 months and get a house. And this is what we begin to even feel like they've got it, so let's get it too. And they think, it's not going to hurt us. We can put in some extra hours, get some good money, and look what we're going to start building. We're going to build it pretty fast for us. So they think it's a good decision that they're doing this. And they don't feel this as a negative pull. But then the ministry leader comes up and says, hey, Mandy, it's May. We got VBS in July. You know, you are the only one who can pull off VBS, and you got to be putting in the extra hours. We got to come up with a theme, get the props going, get the material written, get all the crafts taken care of. You got to organize this and get it going. So with the coworker and the ministry leader start really pulling on them.
Yeah, and the ministry leader over here with Ryan is doing the same kind of thing. Actually, those 5 people that he got to volunteer during the season, they're still in the insane asylum, and so they really need Ryan then. They need Ryan to come on back on board and help with these junior high boys. And they've got 3 different all-nighters coming up, and Ryan's got to help get those things together.
And so where they were really committed to this daily predictable time that we talk about, now it's gotten a little bit of a strain because they're just kind of ships passing in the night. I mean, they're almost becoming roommates in sort of way. They're bumping into each other and they're trying really hard, but the marriage itself is feeling a little bit restricting from what they have been doing, and it's what we call still living single or living married but acting single. We still hold on to what we were doing in our single lives, but we're trying to hold on to our marriage as well. So the marriage feels a little bit restricting. You don't want it to be that way. So you just start compromising. You know what? We don't have to have a devotional every night. And if we don't get to spend time together every day, we'll make sure that on the weekends that we at least spend an hour or so together. So you begin to drop it down so it's not quite so binding, so hold hands. And so you're going to hold hands and you're going to hold on, but you just gradually compromise and you let things go. But you're okay because you're still going to church together. You're still praying at meals together, and you're still being intentional about at least once a month we're going to get together and do something
Date night.
together, a date night or something. But then we start even involving other people, and we go back to that, bringing other people into the dates and not just us and growing it. And so there just begins to be more of a pull. So you guys begin to pull on them some more. And then they go out on one of their double dates, and Michaela says, "You know what, Mandy, I really need to talk to you because Steve and I aren't doing very well, and I'm just not really sure I married the right person. The first couple of years were good, but this just doesn't feel right. Can we start just going out every Tuesday night and you just talk to me about what we need to do about our marriage? Because if not, I think I'm going to leave him." So you start really pulling. So everybody keep pulling. Everybody pull, and Mandy starts feeling that pull.
All right. You can imagine that since they were such good friends, then Steve begins to rely on Ryan a little bit more. Being guys, they don't spend as much time together, but some of the phone calls and things like that can kind of get long over the weekends, and they'll go out and go to Main Event or something like that, maybe shoot a little pool or play a little golf, spending that kind of time together. And Ryan feels really pulled to do that, even if it impacts his marriage with Mandy a little bit.
And now Mandy's mom has come to her and she says, "Mandy, I've been keep pulling, y'all keep pulling, that you don't stop." Because what I want you to realize is that Michaela's got to pull in her life. She's got a marriage that she's getting pulled on. That the ministry leader has her own marriage that she's being pulled, and she's not really paying a lot of attention to her husband. And then we've got a single mom right here. She's got a lot of responsibilities, and so she's got pulls like all over her life as well. So it's not just them, but they're all pulling and they're all feeling pulled together. But now we've got Mandy's mom who says, "I've been taking care of your grandma. She's got dementia, and it's just really, she can't stay by herself anymore. And if I'm going to get things ready to have all the family over for the holidays, I need you to start coming over and helping and maybe spending some weekends and things like that." And it's a big pull that she's putting on Mandy. So you guys just really, really pull on her. Start pulling, and Mandy's feeling the pull. So step out, keep your toe on the hula hoop, but start pulling her even more. Okay.
And Ryan's parents, it's coming up on November again. And what did Ryan used to do every year?
Step out.
He went hunting with his dad. And so did he go hunting last year?
Toe on it, Ryan.
No, so there's kind of an expectation this year, right? So Ryan's dad then asked Ryan, he said, "Listen, Ryan, I want to go hunting with you, and I really need you to go because I've got something really, really important that I need to talk to you about." And so he and Ryan go on this hunting trip at the beginning of November, and this is what his dad tells him. He said, "Ryan, you know, you were the last kid at home, and me and your mom have not really felt connected in the past 5 or 6 years, and we've decided that we're going to separate. And so you're probably going to be at a different place over Thanksgiving and Christmas this year."
I got a call Friday, a marriage of 58 years. Her daughter called, but the granddaughter had given them our name and number. 58 years of marriage, and he moved out. It does happen. It's happening because we do become roommates, because there's no one in the home to really bring us together, and we've allowed other people in the home to be the center of the home, and when they're not there, the home feels empty, and we don't know each other. And this is what's happening so often, is that we're getting that pull. Do any of these people intentionally look at Mandy and Ryan and say, "Well, I'll break that marriage up. My little pull's not that big of a deal," is what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Because they were all at the wedding, and they said, "What God joined together, let no one or nothing separate." And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pray and support it. I'm not going to pull on it. But each person thinks they're justified in what they need from them. And it's not that big of a deal. It's just the commitments that they already had made, and those are all good things they're involved in. And Mandy and Ryan are feeling, instead of feeling the support of being pushed together and affirmed, they're feeling totally pulled apart. Can you relate to this? Do you feel pulled apart in your marriage? Do you feel like there's just more needs from you than what you have to give sometimes? And so they're holding on by a thread. They're going, we are married, and now we can handle getting together for anniversary, birthdays, forget Valentine's. It's a made-up holiday anyway, you know. And so, I mean, they're doing really good just to get birthdays and anniversaries in. And so they've been married about 4 years now, and the fingertips are feeling pretty tight. And so what does every couple think about 3 or 4 years? What will help bring them together?
A kid, yeah,
A kid.
all right.
So can we get a volunteer
somebody
to
come
come
up
up
and be
right
Ryan
quick?
and Mandy's
We
kid.
just need somebody to come up right quick. Come be a kid.
Come on up, man. Excellent. All right, very good. Come on up. Come on up and be their kid.
There's that kid.
All right, very, very good. Very, very good. All right.
Where do you go? Where's the kid go?
There you go.
And very rarely do we have to tell the kids where they go. And then what do Mandy and Ryan do? They don't hold on to each other, but they hold on to that kid, and they think that brings them together. And it does for about the first 2 weeks, and then the crying in the middle of the night gets old, and then the who got up last, and who's doing what, and you're not doing your part, and I'm having to do more than you are. And now they're stressed with bringing that kid in, but they do feel a sense of love because they created this kid.
Who does he look more like? That's what I want to know.
But now we have what we call a child-centered home. Mandy and Ryan are connected through a child. And the times that they spend talking and interacting are because they're parenting together.
Yeah. And so a couple of years later, they think, you know what? We've got one kid. We don't want him to be an only child. And maybe if we have another one, it'll kind of they can kind of take care of each other a little bit more. And so they have one more child. So who will come up and be the next child for Ryan and Mandy? Kid number 2.
Come be a sibling.
Need one sibling. Come on up. There we go. All right. Very
Alrighty.
good. Very good. What a hairy
Lucky
kid.
you.
Good grief. All right.
Lucky you, Mandy. You got 2 boys out of that.
And so you see the picture. Does this look like a normal American family? Yeah.
I don't know about that one. You're pushing the limit,
You've got
Richard.
a point there, I must admit.
But what happens now is divide and conquer. Basically, I'll take care of one, you take care of the other. You know, you go to this activity, I'll go to this activity. We'll juggle, we'll manage this together. And then at this point, it doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 more kids to the mix. The same thing, we're just juggling, we're pulled. And so while they're now pulled by all the kids' activities, they're still ministry, they're still parents, they're still friends, they're still a job and coworkers. So they've still got all the original pulls that they ever had because they didn't learn to simplify life there. And they didn't learn to say no to the good things and yes to the great things. So they're pulled there, they're pulled with kids, and they don't even know who, they forget anniversaries. You know, we'll do that someday. I'll see you someday, I hope, maybe. And now sometimes they even, like Richard and I did, to balance kids, I worked nights, he did the days, and so our kids rarely ever even saw us interacting together.
Yeah, it was interesting. We just thought of this week that sometimes you've ever heard kids who will divide and conquer. You know, one parent they know is going to say no. They're hoping the other one will say yes, so they ask them at different times. I think that they learn divide and conquer from this model right here. The reality is they've seen divide and conquer. That if kids are going in different directions, then parents go in different directions. And everything is done to accommodate the kids. And so instead of honoring marriage, what's the relationship in the home that's honored the most? The kids are. All right, and yet, when the Bible talks about Adam and Eve were brought together, God said, and for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. And so we actually have kids in order to do what? To launch them, right? And so 18 years in, who's the oldest kid? 18 years in, then he comes on out. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a look and turn back. And now what do you see? You see a home, and who are they still? Who's the connection? Your little brother is still the connection. But he's only 3 years. Do you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay, he's only 3 years behind you. I think we said 3. And so in 3 years, then he steps out. So come on, brother. Now, both of y'all look back, and what do you see? The separated
You see a mom and dad that you don't even know if they really like each other. You have no clue what honoring marriage looks like because you've not really seen that because you've got grandparents who are separated. They've been separated all of your life. You've had to alternate going to see them. They've never gotten a divorce. They've just lived apart from each other. You've got ministry. You're raised in a church where you know there's ministry leaders that are even married to each other, but you never even saw them sit together, interact, or even know how to work together as a team, even at church together. and that you don't really see that there's been any sense of honoring. You just look back and their friends ended up divorcing. And so mom and dad's best friends who even introduced them are now divorced. And they look back and they do not have a sense of commitment and a sense of that marriage is really real or it can last. And so kid number one falls in love. She convinces him to get married. They go to the courthouse and they're asked, do you want a contract marriage or a covenant marriage? And in 5 states and others considering it, they're given the option, do you want to get a contract marriage license or a covenant marriage license? And they're calling home and the parents are going, well, we spent so much on the wedding. Which one's cheaper? That's what a lot of it comes down to. Less than 5% in the states where it's offered are getting a covenant marriage, because a contract marriage is you can get divorced for irreconcilable differences. You don't have to have any kind of premarital coaching, counseling, or anything done. There's not a waiting period when you want that divorce, and so it's low cost. Easy in, easy out. You meet my needs, I meet your needs. They're not met, the contract's broken. Covenant marriage, you get premarital. You cannot get divorced for irreconcilable differences. There has to be a cooling off and a counseling coaching period before you can get that divorce, and there's a lot of expense involved in bringing all those people into it. So there's more expense with this covenant. I can't get out. I don't see it really lasting, and besides, it's just a piece of paper. It's just so what difference can it really make? And so the mindset now is, let's just go with the contracts. And I'm committed to you. We're not going to get a divorce. Were Ryan and Mandy in any way thinking they'd be pulled apart? And when the mindset says it's just a contract marriage anyway, and 5, 10, 15 years in, I'm thinking, you're not meeting my needs. I'm doing more for this marriage than you are, and this is a contract, so I want out. Makes it that much easier to walk away.
Yeah, and so speaking of 5%, like Jennalynn said, 5% of people in those states where they're offered are actually choosing the covenant marriage. And by the way, there's at least 3 of those states are actually in the Bible Belt. Here's another 5% deal for you. 5% of kids, when they leave home, just like these two have, whether to work or go to college, when they look back at this home, only 5% of kids say, yeah, I'd want a marriage like my parents. 95% of kids say, no, I don't want a marriage like my parents had.
Just let that sink in for a minute. What is your home looking like? Do the kids and grandkids in your home, are they going to launch and look back and say, I want that? Is there a sacred history or legacy that's being left behind for them? What role are you? Are you a parent, a grandparent, a coworker, a ministry leader? What are you? What role? You may be several of them in here. So what are people seeing about honoring marriage from looking at you and the way you honor your marriage and the way you honor the marriages around you? And if the church doesn't get really excited and active and enthusiastically involved in changing this, when Richard and I go and talk about marriage as a covenant relationship, we're going to have half the people sitting there going, well, no, we got the contract marriage. We actually went to the Capitol against our peers to fight against the offering of the two. And what we said is, you're given an option where God didn't give one. And we don't need to do that. We need to leave it as a covenant and keep it as a covenant, and not bring the option to the table.
Yeah. And so what's the solution for this? Well, at some point or another, somebody's going to have to step up and say, we're going to do something different. And so, in fact, then, Steve and Michaela decide, you know what, we used to be such a good influence, even on Ryan and Mandy, and now look at their lives. They're not close like they used to be. And so they end up coming to a marriage roadshow, and so Michaela and Steve decide, you know what, we're going to get back in our hula hoop.
Well, they're divorced, and so they come to a marriage roadshow. They actually don't even sit together at the roadshow, but during the roadshow, they begin to talk. And after the roadshow, they go and get some great coaching from this wonderful couple named Richard and Jennalynn. And then a couple of months later, Richard and Jennalynn get to do a renewal of vows for them. So come here, Steve. You can stay right here. I don't want you to fall. Okay. So, Rich, do you want to come do the renewal of vows? I think you need to probably do that more than I do.
Steve, do you? All right, Mandy, not Mandy, Michaela, do you? All right, awesome. So you guys are back inside your hula hoop.
And who's attending this wedding but the ones that they introduced? So Mandy and Ryan have come and they've witnessed this, and now they're looking at their marriage at that wedding, and they're looking at each other and they're going, we have an empty marriage. And if we're going to help to support them and see how mighty the God can work in their life, then what are we going to do about our life? What are we going to do with our marriage? and they decide, you know what, we're getting back in this hula hoop. And they're going to pick it back up, and they're going to get out that notebook that they got in coaching, and they're going to recommit. And they're going to learn to simplify their life, and they're going to stop the busyness, and they're going to start saying no to the good things and yes to the great things so that they can let their light shine. So it's not a dim light that's just flickering, but it instead becomes a life that other people go, we want what you have. And in the process, what they do is you can put a hand on their hula hoop, and they're going to put a hand on your hula hoop. And in looking at this, then Mandy's parents see what's going on, because now they're setting some healthy boundaries, but they're seeing it and they're using it as a team of we and us. And Mom, we hope that you'll respect marriage and honor that with us. And they begin to look at their marriage and go, you know, we could learn a lot from Ryan and Mandy here. And so we need to really take hold of our marriage and renew it.
Yeah.
And they've got their 50th anniversary. Oh, I thought you were getting on the hula hoop. They're going to renew their vows, and they're going to, and now hold on to theirs. Hold on to theirs. Loop them in. If you're not holding somebody else's hula hoop, you're not getting it.
Yeah, and even Ryan's parents are brought to tears by what they're seeing with Ryan and Mandy happen. They were so upset about the separation that they saw in them that even they decide, you know what, we can do this, we can work on this, and so they decide they're going to get back in their hula hoop. And again, what you guys do is you say, you know what, we need the support of others, and we need to support them as well, and so they move in to support too.
Okay, now just a minute. We've got two kids who are watching what's happening here, and do the kids need to stay on the outside? Do the kids need to stay on the outside? What are we going to do with the kids here? What Richard and I did with our kids, we went to them and we said, you know what? We didn't honor marriage. We haven't taught you how to honor marriage. And we haven't even allowed you to be a part of honoring our marriage. Now, in honoring it, do they get in the marriage? No. But you guys come right on here. You've seen what's going on with your grandparents. So let them in. They don't have a hula hoop, so come on in the middle. But hold somebody's hula hoop up. Because we're going to learn, how can you teach your children to hold your hula hoop up? Our kids are constantly doing a check-in even with us. And they want to know how our marriage is and what's going on with us. So they're in here. They just don't have their own hula hoop. But they can be a part of honoring your marriage. Now we've got ministry leaders. Come around here. Yeah, you guys, we had some really good friends that she was heavily involved in women's ministry. He was heavily involved in men's ministry. And the church just thought they were wonderful at what they did. Until they divorced. They were in parallel and ended up divorcing, stayed divorced for 10 years and then reconciled. You two realized, you know what? We need to start teaming up together. We can get preschool and these teenage boys together. And so they're going to come in.
Yeah.
And then we've got a single mom who's been a coworker who she begins to recognize this, and she begins to realize, you know what, there's a better way for me to be doing life. And so she comes to a roadshow and she actually meets this wonderful guy there. Do you have a spouse here? Okay. We'll just pretend that he's here. And so they end up, because of the influence of other people and being invited, even as a single mom, to come to a road show, they end up in a wonderful marriage, and now they're in this community of honoring and supporting. So don't be holding your hula hoop. Somebody else should be holding yours up.
And, and so the coworker here as well, and what has he been doing with his girlfriend? Shagging up. And so he has said, and when he watched these marriage relationships at the first, he was really, really glad for the decision he made, because he just saw all of the separation. But now he gets to see something different, right? He gets to see the support. He recognizes what's happening, and so he decides, I'm going to quit shacking up, and I'm going to be the man I need to be, and I'm going to get this girl to marry me, and we're going to work hard at it, and we're going to make it work. And so just imagine Pat's wife in here with him.
Of people that honor marriage, and we're asking you here in Clinton, Oklahoma, will you be the church that becomes the light to marriages? Will you be the place where people feel safe, where they come in and they walk in and this is what they see, and they know this marriage, that their marriage is going to be honored, and that it's going to be cared for and nurtured, because you're going to be brought in, because when these kids get married, guess where they're going to stay? They're going to have spouses that go, I want to be a part of this because I want to be a part of this community. I know we're going to be safe. I know we're going to be held on to, because Ryan and Mindy start going through some tough times. They hit a midlife crisis, and they start letting some of those commitments go again. And so start to drop your hula hoop a little bit. Who's holding it? Start to push it down a little bit. How is it affecting everybody else when you start letting go? Do the people around you know that you're letting go? So is it our business to know when the marriages are struggling around us? Because marriage is to be honored by all. Am I supposed to just honor my marriage? Or do I need to care about the other people in my life?
Yes.
So if they begin to drop theirs a little bit, there's other people that know it just like that and say, hey, what's going on? What can we do to support and help and encourage you and lift you up? What do you need from us the most?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to step out there.
Yeah, it's been too long that in our churches, when a couple goes through difficulties, nobody asks because they think it's not our business. They're afraid they're going to push them away. And so the very first question that they are ever asked then ultimately in regard to their marriage is, well, will the divorce be scriptural? And guys, we got to stop that. We've got to be involved in each other's lives a whole lot more long before that. And the only way that's going to happen is if we are closely connected and watching things. And so then you can imagine then a community of people who sing this. And as Jennalynn said a little while ago, I want you to think about who are you in this picture? Because you're probably not just one person, right? You might be the married couple, or you might be the co-worker, or you might be the parent, or you might be the ministry leader. So you might play any role in this, and so what we need to do is just kind of evaluate all of our roles and make sure that we are living out this command that we find in Hebrews. Marriage should be honored by all. And how many of the marriages around you need to be honored by you? All of them do. And so we need to take a look at this picture. And I'm telling you guys, if the Clinton Church of Christ, if the Custer Avenue Church of Christ will take this view of marriages, then you're going to have a powerful impact on this church and a powerful impact on your community. Let's say a prayer. God, we want to be the people that you want us to be. You have called us into your marvelous light. You have said that you can do abundantly, exceedingly more than we might ask or imagine. And Father, sometimes, especially in regard to marriage culture, we wonder just how can we make it any better? So, Father, you are the one who said you can talk about things that don't exist as though they do. You are the one who gives life back to the dead. And so I pray, Father, that if there's some marriages that are really struggling, that the next 2 or 3 days will really be a blessing to them, and that this church, Father, this body will become a pillar for marriages in this community as we really try to pull together and help each other. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thanks, everybody. We appreciate your help.
Andy and I, partly because of ministry circles, but we've just had a number of different connections with them from Red River, a couple of years up there, and just gotten to know them over the years. In fact, we really got to know Jennalynn first whenever we were getting ready for Briley to be born. She was born in Yukon at the hospital there. Jennalynn was is employed there, and she did our hospital tour. Showed us around, showed us the room, showed us how everything worked, and she explained to us how things would work if there was an emergency and what they would do with Mom and what my role was. And I have to tell you, it was very invaluable information because we did in fact have an emergency, and I knew because of Jennalynn's teaching exactly what to do, and so I just did it, and things worked out well, and they did a great job taking care of both of them. So I appreciate that very much. But I appreciate the ministry that they do, and for y'all being here this weekend. And Richard's going to share a lesson with us this morning, and to kind of kick off this marriage road show. So thanks for being here, Richard.
On or off? There we go. We really do appreciate getting to be here. Appreciate Ryan and the invitation, the conversations, and the communication we've had to make sure that the next 3 days are just really, really, really good days for us. I do want to tell you that I really want to encourage you, even at this last minute, to go in and invite people you know who might benefit from the Marriage Roadshow to come to the Marriage Roadshow. I promise you there's not going to be anything that Jennalynn and I are going to do that's going to be an embarrassment there at all. It's going to be a good thing for them. And what Jennalynn and I say is that our event is designed to help couples go from bad to good or good to great or great to service. And so what that means is our event for a struggling marriage? Absolutely. There are some things that struggling marriages will be able to take. We're hoping to put some tools in your pocket. We're hoping to motivate your heart somehow and maybe shift that in a little bit of a different direction so that if your marriage is struggling, then we're hoping the next 2 or 3 days will help you to take a couple of steps toward a good marriage. And if you've got a good marriage, we want to encourage you to not just be satisfied with that. Good is not good enough. Especially in our culture. And we want to encourage you, if you would say that you've got a good marriage, to come to this marriage event event because what we'd like to do is to help you take a couple of steps a little bit closer to a great marriage, and you'll be able to do that. But even if you have a great marriage, I really want to encourage you to come to this event. Our culture is in the dark in regard to how to have a great marriage. And so if you've got one, then you need to let your light shine a little bit. We want to encourage you to sit in this pew or sit at a table across from somebody maybe who is struggling or maybe who has a good marriage, and they can watch how you interact and see how things go so that maybe they can learn a little bit from you. And then there's this too. But Jennalynn and I want to share some things with you, maybe give you some language that you could use so that as you interact with people, that you can give them some tools yourself that they can use that might make their marriages better. And so bad marriage, good marriage, or great marriage, wherever you are, please come to this event. Even if you're not married and you're planning to be one day, this will be an awesome thing for you still. If you've experienced a divorce but anticipate that you will be married one day, or that you just want to gain some tools for you to be able to give to somebody else, come on to this event. This thing is for everybody. And like I said, Jennalynn and I really believe we've worked hard at this. We think you're going to be blessed by it, and so we really want to encourage you to come. This morning, what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you three stories. One from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament, and then one from the life of Jennalynn and me. The reason that I want to tell these stories is because they illustrate what Jennalynn and I have recognized we did for a long time, and we see a lot in the lives of other people, and that is how we focus on our rights in our marriage relationships instead of focusing on our roles in our marriage relationships. We focus on our rights instead of our roles. They typically come from the same place. If you ask somebody, hey, listen, what kind of Bible passages specifically address marriage? I mean, you're going to find some in, a lot of guys go to the Proverbs passage, well, it's better to live on a rooftop than in a house with a contentious woman. And those things are certainly there. But then there's also those from Ecclesiastes and Proverbs too that say, enjoy the wife of your youth. And then there's those passages probably that we think about more, like the Song of Solomon, which is an incredibly erotic book about the sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. But then when you really get to those things that give the roles, you'll get into places like Ephesians chapter 5. Starting in verse 21, by the way, if your Bible makes a break it between 21 and 22, draw an arrow down there. 21 actually belongs with the section that 22 follows, where it says, so we should all submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so here's how the husband submits to his wife. He would die for her. Here's how the wife submits to her husband. She shows him incredible respect. Here's how parents submit to their children, bring them up in the instruction of the Lord. Here's how children submit to their parents. Obey your parents in the Lord, because this is right. This is how masters submit to their slaves. You treat them well and don't be abusive to them. And this is how slaves submit to their masters. You work hard even when they're not looking, as if you're doing it to the Lord. So that whole passage there then is about mutual submission to each other. And so one of the things then, if you're going to read in the Bible about marriage principles, then you're going to land on Ephesians 5 at some point or another. You can also go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and you'll see in the very first part of 7, especially some things that have to do with the sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. Can you give me my water, baby? Thanks. Then you can look in 1 Peter chapter 3. It's there that Peter deals with the question of wives who are married to unbelieving husbands and what they can do without words to win their husbands just by the behavior of their lives. And then what husbands ought to do with their wives. And the basic thing is you be considerate to them. That's probably the biggest part of that. Number of words involved with that, but you be considerate to your wives. So you take these various roles that we have, and typically what we've done in our American churches and American cultures is instead of looking at what I am supposed to do for my spouse, I look in those passages to find out what my spouse is supposed to do for me. So if a wife isn't experienced that consideration from her husband, the 1 Peter chapter 3 talks about, she's not going to be a happy camper. If a husband doesn't feel like that his wife is giving him the kind of respect that Ephesians 5:33 says she's supposed to, then he's going to be throwing a fit. And so what we've done is we've listened with our elbows instead of our ears. What I mean by that is something's red and you say, did you get that, honey? Did you hear that? Did you read that right? And so we want to make sure that our spouse hears what they're supposed to have. And so sometimes a wife will buy a marriage book and she'll highlight in yellow all the things that she thinks that her husband needs to see. Not those things that are important to her, but those things she wants him to be sure that he reads when he takes a look at it. So we're reading and we're listening with our elbows rather than our ears. And so what that means is that we are focusing on our rights instead of our roles. And what we do then, even in American politics, if we feel like we are not getting our rights, then we revolt. We throw a revolution. You're not going to tax us without representation. And so even in a marriage relationship, when we're not getting our rights met, then very often we throw a revolution, right? And so I want us to direct our attention toward making that shift to where we'll move back toward, if you have made that shift, we move back toward focusing on our roles instead of our rights. And I'm hoping these three stories will kind of illustrate for you the importance of doing that, maybe then how you can do that as well, especially as we move through Monday and Tuesday. Old story, Old Testament story. 2 Samuel chapter 6 is where it's from. This is the story of David bringing the Ark of the Covenant back from the home of Obed-Edom. In the very beginning part of chapter 6, you've got that story about how they're going to transport the ark. Uzzah reaches out to stabilize the ark, and he touches it and he dies. And so because of that, the house then stays in the house of the ark then stays in the house of Obed-Edom for a period of time, because everybody's wondering, how in the world do you transport this thing? If you're going to die when you touch it, how are we going to do it? Well, David figures everything out, if you will, devises the plan in order for that to happen. It's for this reason. Because David got word that because of the fact that the Ark of the Covenant was in the house of Obed-Edom, that Obed-Edom's house had been blessed. I mean, some incredible blessings had come the way of his household. And so now David then, he wants to bring the Ark of the Covenant down to the city of Jerusalem. Not only because he thinks, if I bring the Ark of the Covenant down here to the city of Jerusalem, then just like it's blessed the house of Obed-Edom, it's going to bless the city of Jerusalem. And just like it's blessed the house of Obed-Edom, it's going to bless my house. And just like it's blessed the house of Obed-Edom, if we get it down here to the capital, then it can really be a blessing to all of Israel. And so that was his dream. That's what he really wanted. So he makes the plan, and he's going to bring the Ark of the Covenant down. But it isn't as though he just sends a bus to go get it. David actually goes to where the Ark of the Covenant is, and he is leading the progression down. And so if you'll move up that slide, then what you'll see is a couple of pictures here of David dancing as he's coming down with the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm going to describe what he's doing here in kind of some 21st century ways. Ancient Israel was a lot more rural, I guess you'd say, than a lot of people, especially those of us who live in Oklahoma City live. We moved here from Tennessee. Our yard was an awful lot bigger in Tennessee than it is here. Every yard in Oklahoma City is 65 feet by 65 feet, and it's incredible the houses you can build on those things, but it's a typical size yard there. And so I'm going to describe it in that kind of way, as if living on the street instead of the rural way, but I think you'll kind of get the picture of what David was doing. So David is bringing the Ark of the Covenant back from the city of Jerusalem, and because of the fact that he believes all of the nation is going to be blessed when the Ark of the Covenant is there, that he's going house to house, knocking on the door. People are coming to the door, and he's saying, the Ark of the Covenant is coming to the city of Jerusalem. We're all going to be blessed by this. And just as soon as he hugs those people, gives them a kiss, and tells them their house is going to be blessed, he sees a house on the other side of the road. And so he runs across the road over there, dancing as he goes. He knocks on that door. They open the door. What's up? He says, man, the Ark of the Covenant is coming to Jerusalem. Everybody's going to be blessed by this. And so here he is, just going across the street, down the way. Down at the end of the way, he sees his house. He knows that home is going to be blessed by it as well. And so he's really excited as he's approaching it, but he's going to be blessing these other homes along the way as he goes. Now, because of the fact that he is in Israel, and because of the fact that he's wearing an awful lot of clothes, as kings might do, as he's going along and dancing, he starts to get hot. And so what does he do? He begins to take off some clothes. Now, I don't know how naked David got. I'm not sure just how much clothes he took off, but I do know that as he was going along, he took off enough clothes that down the road, as you can see in the picture here, there was somebody who was watching from his house, and that woman's name was Michal, and she was his wife. She was also the daughter of the previous king named Saul, but now she is his wife. and she's watching David from the window as he is approaching the house. So here's David blessing each house as he goes, dancing as he goes, taking off his clothes because he's so happy, dancing before the Lord, rejoicing before the Lord. He's approaching that house down there, and while he's blessing these houses, he's thinking, I get to bless that house in a minute. That's where I'm going. That's my goal. Michal is there, and she's going to come out. I know she's going to come out. She's going to meet me halfway, and she's going to come and give me a big hug and a kiss, and we're probably going to do the last several houses together as we're telling everybody about the blessing of the Lord that's coming. And so David anticipated that he had a right to a wife who was going to join him in celebrating this incredible bringing of the ark to the city of Jerusalem. He has a right to have a wife who will come out of that house, who will come toward him and embrace him, and will verbally share in that celebration, and will grab hold of his arm as they walk hand in hand as king and queen down toward their own house to where it can be blessed as well. That's what David thinks his rights are as a man, as a husband, as a king. But Michal's not doing that. Michal is in that window and she's watching what has happened. She's got a number of apparently servant girls who are around her who are all giggling at what they're seeing as David comes down the road. And she has an entirely different set of rights, she thinks. And so, in fact, when she steps out of the house and goes toward where David is, David's here anticipating a big embrace, right? But he doesn't get a big embrace. Instead, he gets sarcasm. He gets that mean look in her eyes. Her brow is furrowed a little bit. Maybe she's pointing that finger at him. And she is terribly upset because she has a right to have a husband who will act a little more dignified, for goodness sakes. Who won't come down the road making a fool of himself, making her to where she's in the window watching with her servant girls that they're laughing at her husband. They're laughing at her husband, and she's the queen. She has a right to expect that her husband is not going to embarrass her in that way. And so David is coming forth with a lot of rights. She's going out with a lot of rights. And boy, when those rights meet in the front yard, they clash big time. David, she says, how in the world can you embarrass me like this? You're acting like such a fool. You're acting like such a fool. Coming down the road, taking off your clothes. I can't believe, put your clothes back on for goodness sakes. And look at these people around. Your people are laughing at you, David. Why in the world are you doing this kind of thing? And all that didn't sit good with David. Didn't sit well with him at all. And so he gets in a little sarcasm himself. And so he says, you think those girls are laughing at me? They are not laughing at me. They are laughing with me, and you should have been laughing with me too. In fact, I'll bring in a whole quarry of servant girls who will be able to laugh just like you ought to be able to laugh because you're my wife. And you're coming out here shaking your finger at me. Do you remember who you are? Do you remember who I am? I am the king. Oh yeah, and I am the king who God put in place of your daddy who couldn't be king anymore. And you're coming out here and you're telling me this? How embarrassing for you that you would treat me, the king, in that way. And so you get two people focusing on their own rights, meeting in the front yard, and those rights colliding. And the end of chapter 6, there in the book of 2 Samuel, says this. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, bore no children, even till the day that she died. Now, there are some people who think that it was God who looked at Michal and because of her disrespect actually made her womb to where she couldn't bear children. I don't think that's what happened. I think that what happened was David thought, I'm not going to have sex with a woman who just treated me that way, especially when I've got 4 more wives waiting in the wings. And so he removes himself sexually from his wife. And in such a way even that she has no children, which was a catastrophe, especially for wives in those days. And I don't know if there's really connection here. I'm just going to draw it here. You can draw your own connections. There's nothing in Scripture that necessarily says that there's anything here, but I just wonder if this isn't tied to this. In 2 Samuel chapter 6, David cuts himself off from Michal, one of his wives, sexually. I'm not going to have sex with you anymore because of this crummy way that this disrespectful way that you treated me. That's in chapter 6. In chapter 10, so 4 chapters later, David is on his rooftop and he sees a woman named Bathsheba bathing. And he calls her up, has sex with her, gets her pregnant, tries to cover it up, kills her husband. And all of that just 4 chapters after this time that he cuts himself off from his wife, or cuts his wife off from him. Again, I don't know whether there's a tie there, but there could be. But I do know this, that especially for Michael in this way, from the standpoint of having children, what a catastrophe this was, that in fact her needs met the needs of her husband, her rights met the needs of her husband, and they collided, and because each was focusing on their rights, it was a disaster for her. And to be quite honest with you, David doesn't look all that great in this situation, does he? We usually tell the story about David and Bathsheba when we're looking for those things that we think, and that's a man after God's own heart. You can kind of do that at the end of chapter 6 as well, and wonder, why would a man say this to his wife and then do this to his wife, knowing what a catastrophe it was for her? You get two people focusing on their rights, and it brings catastrophe. That's the Old Testament story. Here's the New Testament story. If you like Mark, go to Mark 14. If you like Matthew, go to Matthew 26. Those are the two that I like the best, to kind of give the most details, I guess you would say, of what happens here. This is this chapter where Jesus and his apostles are in the upper room. Incredible things happening in that upper room. So if you want to go ahead and bump up the slide, that next one. Incredible things happening in that upper room. This is where Jesus has that incredible conversation that's recorded in John chapter 14 through 16, where it begins with, so don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Includes again that prayer in chapter 17 where he prays for himself, where he prays for his apostles, and then where he prays for you and me, those of us who would believe on him through the word of his disciples. It's there that the beginning of the meal that all of us ate in just a little while ago, the Lord's Supper was instituted. It is in that room where Jesus said, this is my body and this is my blood of the new covenant. It's in this room where Judas has his final positive moments, if you will, with Jesus. Because Jesus knows what was upcoming. He's already been talking with those men who would come and arrest Jesus and ultimately take him to his trials and to his death. And so even when he goes then and he washes the feet, that's in John chapter 13, he washes the feet of these apostles. He didn't grab Judas's toes and stretch him a little bit thinking, I know what you're about to do, and hurting him in any way. But instead our loving Lord washed his feet just like he washes everybody else's feet. And he places Judas, the one who is going to betray him, apparently so close to him that they are dipping in the same bowl with their food. This is how close Judas brought. And so it's understandable then that when it's time for him to go, Jesus is even able to say, yeah, Judas, it's you. And Judas leaves that scene and he goes out to find the people who are going to meet Jesus a little bit later. And so then Jesus and the rest of the apostles, they walk down the Kidron Valley, and after they cross through that Kidron Valley, they go up on the other side, and the other side is what we know in Scripture as the Mount of Olives. At some point or another, several of the disciples stay there, but Jesus takes Peter, James, and John a little farther along with him to where they go to the Garden of Gethsemane. And then there's a tree where Jesus leaves Peter, James, and John, and he says to them, listen, guys, I want you to stay here, stay awake, and keep watch. And then Jesus goes on up the mountain. And if you know the story that's told in Matthew there, you recognize that this is the place where Jesus begs God, God, will you let this cup pass from me? Will you let this cup pass from me? As we were participating in the communion a little while ago, I really appreciated the message of the adopted children and what it was going to cost Jesus. You know, when you turn over the book of Hebrews, you read it, especially in chapter 4, that one of the reasons that God put on flesh and came to live for a while among us, as he talks about in John chapter 1, is because we needed a sympathetic high priest. And I don't just think that when Jesus came and put on flesh here, that we can realize that Jesus can be sympathetic. I think the things instead that Jesus went through as a person just really helped him to understand what it is to be in the human condition, so that he really can be a more sympathetic high priest because he's experienced the human condition than he could have been if he had never experienced it. And so here is Jesus, and he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and can you just imagine the betrayal that he's feeling? And certainly he knew about Isaiah 53. He wrote it after all, and he knew what was going to be coming. He knew of the rejection of the people. and yet still to face the rejection, to know that Judas had just left to go betray me. It's happening. It's happening. It's coming. It's here. And so because of this, then Jesus is on that mountain and he's praying. He says, God, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Now I want you to remember some of the things that Jesus has experienced here in his life. When Jesus was baptized by John in the Jordan River, he comes up out of the water, and what happens? A voice from heaven says, this is my son, in whom I am well pleased. Later on, Jesus is with Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Transfiguration. They say, when they see Jesus with Moses and Elijah, oh, wow, what an incredible thing for us to be here. Let's build 3 altars, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for Jesus. And this voice from heaven says, this is my son, in whom I love. Listen to him. And so Jesus has heard these voices from heaven, and now here he is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, Father, let this cup pass from me. And this one who has heard the voices from heaven might expect, he might think, I have a right to hear from the Father. Here in the worst time of my life, just before I'm about to go through this horrible difficulty, surely I've got a right, I'm the Son of God, to hear from the Father. And it's crickets. It's crickets, y'all. There's no voice like there was at the river. There's no voice like there was at the Mount of Transfiguration. It's crickets. And so he walks then down toward the hill, down toward Peter, James, and John. And what does he find them doing? They're asleep. And so Jesus wakes them up, and he says in his irritation, hey, can't you just stay awake for 1 hour? And yet in his grace, he says, guys, I know the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Aren't we so glad that Jesus knows that about us? That he can know our hearts and know that our spirits are willing even when our flesh is weak. Jesus goes back up the hill. He prays again, God, let this cup pass from me. And as far as the text is concerned, with what answer he gets, it's crickets. There's just no sound. Jesus goes back down the hill, and so he's not getting his rights from God, he might feel like. He's not even getting his rights from his apostles now, because what does he find them doing again? Sleeping. And so he has to wake them up again. A third time he goes up into the mountain to pray. Again, there's no answer saying, Jesus, we're going to do something else. I'm going to remove this cup from you. But instead, he determines that what the will had been set to do, the will was going to continue to do. And so he marched back down the hill. He found Peter, James, and John asleep again. He wakes them up, and then he looks down the hill, and there's Judas, his apostle, coming to betray him. In such a way that he even walks up, and Judas gives him a kiss. I can just imagine Jesus saying those words that he says to him, hey, Judas, what you're going to do quickly. And Judas betrays Jesus right in front of all of those men. They know then who they are supposed to arrest. They come and arrest Jesus, and they take him away. But I want you to see that when Jesus had come down from the mountain with this non-answer from God, if you will, about relieving him of this cup that he was about to have to drink, he marched down the hill toward Judas. He submitted himself to the arrest. And then there he goes. And the things, the trials, the beatings, and the crucifixion then that Jesus experiences then in the next couple of days, as he endures the cross and the pain that existed there, then what we read later on as the Hebrew writer looks back on that event and is encouraging the people who are reading his book, he says, so let's fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and is now sitting at the right hand of God. Maybe we would say it this way. So let's fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him pursued his role instead of demanding his rights, and is now sitting at the right hand of God. Can you see the importance then of when you pursue your roles, just how much glory that can be. Jesus did it, and he saved our souls because he followed his role. Jennalynn and I were some of those who we didn't follow our roles. This is the third story. It's a 20th century and a 21st century story. Jennalynn and I got married in 1986. The first 15 years of our marriage were horrible. We really thought that we were going to have a great marriage. She came from parents who were still married. My parents were still married. I was in youth ministry then. She had been a Christian most of her life as well. We just anticipated that things were going to just flow really easily. You'll hear more of that story as we go along. But we came, it turned out, from incredibly different homes, and I expected that the home that I lived in and the good things that I wanted to come out of it would be a part of that home that we were living in and that we were making. And Jennalynn anticipated the things that were a part of her home that made her comfortable, that those were going to be a part of our home. So she had a right to something she felt like. I had a right to something else, and for 15 years, guys, we battled for those rights. Maybe I should say for 13 years we battled for those rights, because at some point or another, we paid a little bit of attention to Paul Faulkner and Carl Burkeen, who are traveling around the country doing things in regard to marriage. And we recognized, you know what, this isn't about rights, this is about roles. And so for a couple of years, Jennalynn and I focused on roles. I focused on her role, and she focused on mine. Really trying to make sure that the other one was doing what they were supposed to do. Looked an awful lot like pursuing our rights, but it had a little bit more of a holy tint to it, right, since we're talking about the Bible things. It got so bad that I still remember the night that Jennalynn and I were in an argument, and she ended up going out of the house. It was a December night. It was actually freezing drizzle outside, and all she had on was a T-shirt that she had been wearing when we were arguing, and she just couldn't take it anymore. And she walked out the back door of our house and into a field that lived right behind us. We had just seen some coyotes on our porch 2 or 3 nights earlier than that. And what Jennalynn was hoping is she sat out there and she said, not these words, but this sentiment: God, let this cup pass from me. This is a whole lot worse than what I thought it was going to be. You know him. You know what it is like to be married to him. Would you let this cup pass from me? And if this is what it takes to let this cup pass from me, would you just let the coyotes come and eat me alive? I knew she was out there. I didn't like our arguments any more than she did. And so I let her sit out there. I don't know how long it was ultimately until she came in. I'm the kind of person that stress kind of puts me to sleep. And so I had knocked out asleep. Jennalynn ultimately came in. I'm sure we slept in different places that night. But it wasn't until a couple of years even after that, where we went from the 20th century to the 21st century, that Jennalynn and I began to get some messages about how important it is to focus on our roles and our own roles instead of our rights. And if you'll be a part of the road show in the next couple of 3 days, you're going to get to hear some more details about that as we encourage you in that. But I do want you to see that if we follow the way of David, you get 2 people pursuing their rights, and it brings catastrophe. If we follow the way of Jesus, we have one who pursues his role, and it brought him glory, and it brought us heaven. And then if you watch the life of Jennalynn and me, you can see us going through 15 years of focusing on our rights and the hell it brought to our home. And then you can focus on what is approaching 15 years on the other side of the year 2000, where we have been focusing instead on our roles. And she's still very much the person she was. And I'm still very much the person that I was. But because we're focusing on our roles, you would describe our marriage a lot more like heaven on earth than what you would have earlier. We all have roles. You have different roles. Maybe you're a husband and wife. Maybe you're a father. Maybe you're a mother. Maybe you're a child. Maybe you're an employee. Maybe you have employees. In all of those things, we have roles, and I really want to encourage you, turn your heart toward pursuing your roles, even when other people aren't, because God is going to bless you in that. That really is the way to glory. It really is the way to glory. Maybe there's somebody here today, and you know my role has been as a sinner, and it's time for me to pursue my role of becoming a child of God. And today you're ready to be baptized for the forgiveness of sins. Maybe you've been studying about that with somebody here recently, and you say, this is the day that I'm going to do that. The Hebrew writer said it this way: today is the day of your salvation. Maybe there's some of you here who recognize, well, I've had some roles, but I've really been focusing on my rights. and it has brought at least not good. In some way, it's brought catastrophe. And if you feel like you might need some help, the prayers of the body of Christ in order to turn that around, in order to make that shift, we want to give you that opportunity. This is what I strongly believe. The prayers of the body of Christ are powerful and effective. That's a little bit of change from James chapter 5, who says the prayers of a righteous man are powerful and effective. But would you say that with me? The prayers of the body of Christ are powerful and effective. One more time. The prayers of the body of Christ are powerful and effective. If you need those prayers today, then come while we stand and sing.